All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. So today we are talking all about pain and injury. And essentially this particular podcast was created because today I personally am in a lot of pain. And 2 hours ago, at the time of recording this podcast, I hurt myself during training. And as I record this podcast, I'm in a bit of pain. Facing pretty serious mental struggle. And all in all, I'm not feeling amazing. But in amongst all this, I thought this would be a good inspiration for a podcast today and potentially a little mini series over the next few days and just seeing how things progress. Because what I'm experiencing right now, which I'll go into in a moment, like in all the detail, is just incredibly common for a lot of hikers out there. It's something that for me personally, like I help hikers with on the other side of things every single day. I'm on, and our hikers sort of go through their training process. They're leading up to some things. Something goes wrong. They hurt themselves on the trail during training, whatever it may be. Everything begins to kind of domino and escalate. And one of my roles as a coach is helping hikers through this. And considering today, I'm on the other side of it. I'm not the one helping the hiker through. I'm not the one helping the person who's in pain and giving them advice and giving them encouragement and giving them clarity. I'm the one in pain. I thought this could be an incredibly valuable resource just to share my experience here. And I think it might be a really good one just to kind of hear like what I'm going through, just to kind of know it's normal and sort of certain steps to take when this type of thing happens. So first, to begin with, let's talk about a little bit of context to where this is all coming from. So recently, probably about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, I've started a new sport. And essentially what I've started doing is some martial arts. What's happened is it's not something that's ever been a part of my life, not something I've ever explored before. But essentially, I've signed up for this 20-week program where basically they'll take someone from absolutely nothing, knowing absolutely nothing about martial arts and this and that, to, in the end of the 20 weeks, having a real sanctioned fight at the end of the 20-week mark. Now, before I go any further, you might be thinking, okay, Rowan, martial arts, why are you talking about that? What's that got to do with hiking? This podcast is about hiking. And the reason I want to talk about this is because the reasons, the emotions, the challenges, the struggles, and the journey that I'm about to talk you through are incredibly similar to the journeys I hear from hikers every single day. From hikers who might decide they want to take up hiking after years and years and years of not doing it. Or maybe they haven't been out on the trail for a couple of years. Or maybe they're coming back from a big injury that sidelined them. Or maybe they've just booked in a big trip which they've been dreaming about for years and they run into issues. And many other situations in the hiking context. I hear this from the other end every single day from people. So today, as I'm talking about this journey, this story of myself, and I'm talking about this martial arts, I just want you to have the dual perspective of I'm talking about this, but this could be very easily a hiker, yourself, a family member, whatever it may be. Now, talking about this martial arts stuff, it's not something I've ever done before. But where it's sort of come from is over the last few years, my training, my fitness, my workouts have been really stagnant. Now, it's really a common thing, or it's a tricky thing as a personal trainer and an online personal trainer, because I spend all day helping people get fit, get strong, get resilient, this and that. But for myself, I've been struggling with my training myself. I've been really hit and miss with it. I'll be good for a month or two and then I'll kind of fall off, or I'll do a good week and then I'll be like, I can't be bothered, or whatever it may be. And ultimately, I haven't really had over the last few years, I haven't really had any big goals to aim towards. There's nothing that's particularly tickled my fancy, nothing particularly that I've been really striving towards. And even looking in the hiking context of I could, book in a big trip, I could book in a big adventure. Nothing's particularly jumped out at me, inspired me to lock in. For a multitude of reasons that I won't go into. But there hasn't really been a big goal. And what I've noticed over the last few years is my physical health, it's gone down. It's suffered. I haven't been feeling amazing. Aches and pains been creeping up. I went to the doctors. I found out I had high cholesterol for the first time in my life. And that's probably a consequence of, not just physical exercise, but, living down the road of the best burger joint in the world and having that a little bit too much. But anyway, my physical health has suffered. My mental health has, been struggled. My mood, my energy, my confidence has gone down. Even how I turn up to my work. I love working with hikers. I love helping with hikers. But I've been turning up and sometimes I've just been a little bit dimmer than I like to be. All of these things have been negatively impacted. And one of the big driving forces of that is just been around my training, my fitness, my exercise. I know for myself when I'm training, when I'm fit, when I'm strong, all of those things fall into place. So ultimately, I decided I need to do something new. I needed to just take a different approach to what I was doing. I needed something bold and different to get me inspired, to get me pumped up, to get me doing these things. And essentially, as that all was coming across, I saw an opportunity for this 20-week thing. And I took it. I was like, boom, you know what? I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to book this in. I'm going to do it. Something completely new, something I've never thought about before, but I'm going to make this happen. And essentially what's been happening, 5 mornings a week for 20 weeks, we go to the gym together, 5 a.m. for an hour and a half, we learn skills, we get fit, we get strong, and ultimately put it all into action further down the line. And over this time, I've been learning new skills. I've been completely out of my comfort zone. I suck at all of this. And there will be other podcast episodes that I want to talk about in regards to learning new things and getting out of your comfort zone. And I've really, really struggled with a bunch of things. But over the weeks, I've really got into it. And I've been enjoying it. I've been consistent. I've been just really, really getting into it. I've started learning more. And I've just started really pushing myself with my physical capabilities, which I haven't done in a while. And not only have I realized that I'm loving the training again, I'm getting that excitement in my training because I've got this end purpose, but I'm having all these carryover effects. I'm having more energy. I've got a better mood. I've got a better focus. Physically, I just feel better about myself. And physically, I'm just getting a bit more confidence in my body. Now, on that note, getting a bit deeper. That's something I've never really talked about before, like in depth, is, over these last couple of months or something, I've been really, really regaining confidence in my body's capabilities. Because, in the past and, over my life, I've had a lot of injuries of just little aches, little niggles, little injuries that have popped up and kind of got in the way of me doing things. And when I've been doing things a little bit more energetic or a little bit more chaotic or a little bit more different, I've realized, look, my body's struggled with certain things. And as much as I'm good at the things that I'm good at, I've avoided certain things. And I've gotten into my mindset, I had previously gotten into my mindset that my body was fragile. That, yes, I could do the things I'm comfortable with. Yes, I could get myself to hike for weeks and weeks and weeks if I really wanted to and all of that. But there were certain things that I probably shouldn't be doing, and I did limit myself. And because of my profession, because I spend all day, every day talking about fitness and training for hiking, because, I help people with things, because I do this. This probably wasn't apparent from the outside because, I'm saying all of this stuff. It's not like I'm just been sitting on the couch absolutely not being able to do things. I could still go out and lift heavy weights. I could go out and still do long hikes. I still was kind of relatively fit. I could do things. But I was ultimately just sticking with what I was comfortable with, what I knew, what I've been doing again and again and again and again. And I was avoiding the unknown. I was avoiding the unpredictable. And in the back of my head, in all honesty, this was something that I was kind of worried about for the rest of my life. Looking at the next 10, 20, 30 years, I was like, am I going to be limiting myself to certain things for so long ahead? And, it's a hard thing to admit, but that is a sort of question and something that I've thought about a lot. And, before I go any further, I know this is something that a lot of hikers struggle with when they're looking at things they want to do, looking at bigger adventures, looking at just stepping into hiking. Sometimes we really do limit ourselves because of our past history, because of what we've been doing, because of our injuries or whatever it may be. So I think that feeling may be familiar to a few people. And essentially, continuing on with the story, as I entered this new sport, I was honestly half convinced that I was going to hurt myself early on. I was going to give it my best shot, but I was pretty in the back of my head. I think I was going to hurt myself, and that'd be that. See you later, done. But, surprise, surprise, I didn't. I got through things. Things were tough. It was struggle. But I got through it. And week by week, I was getting fitter. I was getting stronger. I was getting more skilled. My confidence in all of these more chaotic things was beginning to return. I began to really start to lose those self-limiting beliefs that had been a part of me for years. I'd realized I hadn't really thought about them deeply, but they had been there. They began to disappear. I started to believe I could do things that I wanted to. I could go around and be the Energizer Bunny. I could jump, I could spring, I could sprint or whatever. Just do random things that I had potentially been avoiding. And in all honesty, as I'm talking about this, I'm getting a little bit emotional personally because it's a tough thing to talk about. It's a tough thing to verbalize, and it's something I've never really explored a huge amount. As much as I heard hikers say it on the other end, and I've sometimes, in conversations just tried to open up a dialogue so people can admit that type of stuff because it can be really powerful. But for myself, I've never really said it. But, this sort of certain thing is such an important thing for me. And in the last couple of weeks, so I've probably been training for, I think, 9-10 weeks. In the last couple of weeks, things have really started to come together for me. First period, really tough, really hard, really overwhelming. But things are starting to come together. I'm absolutely nowhere near where I need to be at the end of this 20-week process. I've still got a long, long, long way to go, but I felt like things were coming together. I could see the vision. Things were making sense. I was feeling stronger. I was feeling the progression. I was feeling I was getting this momentum. But then this morning, about 2 hours ago, I hurt myself. Essentially what we were doing this morning, we were doing some wrestling, which again is very far out of the idea of the hiking context, but, this is just the example. We were doing some wrestling, which is pretty rough stuff. We were literally just throwing each other around. And at the end of the session, I got through the session fine. At the end of the session, as the blood and the heat began to cool down, I began to notice a bit of a throb in my arm. I was like, oh, what's that? 5 minutes later, as I got even cooler, that throb was like a serious pain. And over the next 15 minutes, as we're just finishing things up in the gym, it just got worse and worse and worse. And I was like, oh, this sucks. This is not good. And as I was driving my home, I was literally gritting my teeth, just counting down the minutes until I get some painkillers into me, because I was like, this is super uncomfortable. And as much as it was physically uncomfortable, mentally, I was freaking out. My mind just started to run away from me. And I started to think like, what if I really hurt myself here? Is that the end of this thing? This something that I've been so committed, so dedicated, been looking forward to so much. Is that the end of it? Because right now, I'm nowhere near I need to be. I've got to progress so much to get ready in these 20 weeks. I have so much to learn, so much to develop, so much to get there. The deadline is looming. And if I have to take 2 to 3 weeks of no training to let this properly recover, get back to normal, that's potentially over. All of this hard work, it's for nothing. And then from there, when I was like, oh my gosh, that spiraled even more. And that limiting belief about my own fragility reared its head. I hadn't really seriously thought about that in a long time. I hadn't heard that voice in months. And I started to say to myself, well, that was always going to happen. What did you expect? You can't do these types of things. You might as well give up because this is not for you. And this whole freak out, this whole mental spiral, it happened in the course of about 10 minutes. And if you ever gone through one of these mental spirals, you know how rough it can be. You know how much it sucks. You know how much we can beat each other up. And this will happen to so many people when we go through an injury, when we hurt ourselves, when we go through something, whatever it may be. We'll just spiral. But after about 10 minutes of this, of just getting out of control, I had a little moment of clarity. And I was like, hold on, Rowan. Just take a breath. And I was like, Rowan, you help people with this exact same thing every day. Literally yesterday, you had someone telling me all of these things you're thinking. You have hikers reach out to me who are training for a big trip, who have a deadline, they get a tweak or strain, and they start to freak out. So what do you say to them? Well, first of all, whenever someone's going through this, I tell them not to freak out. Don't be your own worst enemy. This type of thing is super, super, super common. It happens. We just got to pick ourselves up and do what we can. Second of all, I'll tell them not to jump to the worst case scenario. In my head, it had only just happened like half an hour ago, but I was sort of visualizing, oh, this is going to put me out for weeks. I'm in all sorts. I'm, done all this bad stuff. And we can jump to the worst case solution. But I tell my hikers, don't jump to that worst case scenario. It could be a bad injury, potentially. If you've tweaked your knee, if you've hurt your shoulder, if you've done this, it could be bad. Or in all honesty, it could just be a tweak. It could just be something that's aggravated right now. But it may not actually be anything too serious. It's hard to tell in the initial stages. So reserve judgment for 48 hours. See how things go over the next 48 hours and see how it settles before you jump to that worst case scenario. Third of all, I tell them, okay, while that's going on, you want to find comfort and relief where you can. What can you do to relieve this discomfort? What can you do to sort of help the recovery? What can you do there? So for me, I got home and I had some painkillers, sorted myself out. Nothing too crazy, but I had some painkillers. I've got this little natural muscle relief cream, which I put on, which felt good. Later in the day, I'm probably going to go swim in the cold ocean. I'm going to do some self-massage regularly, not so much on the particular sore spot, but on those surrounding muscles. I'm just going to do everything I can, just get comfort, get relief, help things relax, and help things settle during this time. And then fourth of all, I tell my hikers to do some action planning for that worst case scenario. So what I mean by that is if, say, you get the bad news, say you've got a couple of weeks or multiple weeks where you have to take it easy. In amongst all that, what can you do? You've got this goal, you've got this ambition, you've got this dream, you've got this deadline. What can you do to move yourself towards that, even if you have to protect the particular area. So I was sort of thinking to myself, okay, worst case, if I need to take two to 3 weeks off training, how am I going to cope? Am I just going to give up? Or are there ways to sort of work around it? And the easy answer is like always, always, always. Well, not always. 99.99% of the time, there is something you can do to work around it. For myself, I was thinking, okay, my arm is the issue, the pain, potentially an injury. Who knows yet? So if that does end up being an issue, I'll be able to work through my fitness doing lower body cardio. I can get on a stationary cycle. I can do some intervals there. I can do work. That'll be doable. For me, like, I'm doing martial arts, so I'm kind of like, a bit of punching. I might not be able to practice actually punching, but I can practice on, my footwork. I can make kicks. I might not be able to participate in the lessons themselves, but I can still absorb information. I can still go to the lessons. I can actually learn while maybe not doing it. And maybe there's other areas that I can dedicate extra time to. Learning, practicing mental stuff, focusing on my nutrition or whatever it may be. All of these bits and pieces are exactly what I tell my hikers to do when they have something that goes on like this. I tell them, don't freak out. I tell them, give it 48 hours, see how you go. I tell them, find the relief where you can. And I tell them, look, we will work around this regardless of what happens. What areas can we do to move you forward? So for myself, I'm going to try and follow my own advice. So coming off the back of this, this podcast is being recorded about 2 hours after I hurt myself. Things are still very, very, very fresh. So what I'm going to try and do is record another one about 24 hours after this and just document how that last 24 hours ago, what the mental struggles were, how things are feeling, and what the next steps are. Maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll be like, boom, I'm perfectly fine. Maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and be like, oh my gosh, I've torn my bicep off the bone, which I don't think I have, but, we will see. And for you, as a hiker listening, I just want you to know off the back of this, yes, okay, interesting story, Rowan, going through this, but I just want you to know these situations are common. You may not have gone through this yet, or you may not be dealing with it right now, but they are common. They happen to everyone. And when you are training towards a big event, which does have a deadline, something that's going to be challenging, you need to build yourself up, but it has a deadline, this type of situation can be incredibly stressful. This dream can get uncertain. You can start to doubt yourself. You can start to freak out. But there is always something you can do to manage things, to work around things, and to get you where you need to be. So if you're listening to this and you're in the midst of a similar situation, say you're training for a big trip, you've just had an injury or just had a flare up, or maybe this is in the future or whatever it may be, just know there is hope. Over the next few days, follow these steps. Number 1, try not to freak out. And if you catch yourself freaking out, break the pattern however you can. For myself, when I catch myself in the negative thoughts, I'm literally going to say out loud, Rowan, stop it. Every single time I catch myself thinking negatively, I'm going to say that and then get on with my day. Whatever you need to do to break that pattern of negative thoughts. Number 2, try to reserve judgment for 48 hours. May settle. If it's bad, go and see a physio, see a physical therapist, get yourself sorted. But reserve judgment for 48 hours. During those 48 hours, I'm going to do everything you can to settle the issue. What you can do to help, manage the discomfort. What you can do to help relieve a bit of discomfort. What can you do just to help the recovery? And then finally, worst case scenario, say things come out bad news. Plan out some positive things you can do to help you move you forward with your training, with your recovery. Those 4 things. Don't freak out, reserve judgment, do everything you can to settle, and then plan out some positive things to work around it. If you're going through this situation, do those things. I promise you it'll serve you well. So with that being said, that's probably enough for me today. I hope this was interesting. I hope it was insightful. And I really do hope that a few hikers in the future who are going through the exact same thing I'm talking about today, it can help. So wish me luck for the next 24 hours, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.